There's something oddly fascinating about old buildings and places that sit empty along the road. They were once filled with people and activities, and the amateur archaeologist wants to peek inside and see what remains. Going to these places is like time travel and captivates the imagination. Come along for an adventure across 9 Indiana counties as we explore the ruins of southern Indiana. Along the Ohio River is a peculiar place, Mistletoe Falls. Over the years, it's achieved a dark reputation, known by many as the Witch's Castle. From a basement with bars being called a dungeon, to a large stone fireplace, possibly where a witch's cauldron burned over a fire. There are many urban legends about this place, but the truth is a lot less sinister. It was built by a man trying to win back his estranged wife. The place caught on fire many decades ago, and nature has been reclaiming it ever since. The most impressive structure is the chapel, built for his wife so she could pray anytime she wanted to. As cool as it looks today, even in ruins, she didn't like the place and never lived here. Charlestown State Park offers a very interesting look at an abandoned theme park. While you can hike down a very steep hill to get there, they often offer a shuttle, and I highly recommend it. Crossing the bridge takes you back in time, into what looks like an island. It's actually a very long peninsula. There are markers all over Rose Island, telling about its history. And there is much to see and explore. While these don't always work, a good crank will often play an educational message. Any time of the year, the place just has a presence. From a resort destroyed by flood to ancient castle ruins built by an unknown people, there are many unsolved mysteries at Rose Island. Near the Falls of the Ohio is a very ornate railroad bridge abutment made of limestone. Looking inside, it's much like an abandoned castle. When the state prison was at Clarksville, just down the road, prisoners were taken from the train above and processed here. In the early days of that prison, it was a nightmare. And not to be overly dramatic, for many, this was the gate to hell. Further west, you'll see the ruins of an 1800s homestead. During the Revolutionary War, General George Rogers Clark defeated the British at Vincennes and was given this land. He built both a cabin and mill along the river and lived here until he had a stroke. This is also where his brother William Clark and Meriwether Lewis started their expedition to the Pacific Ocean. And if you hike the nearby trail, you'll see an old trolley once used in the area. It's a place of many surprises. Harrison County was once the state capital. You don't have to try hard to find hints from the past. From old barns across the countryside, to a general store from the 1800s, one of my favorites are the Rothrock Mill ruins. It was a sizable mill with gigantic supports like ancient columns. It's now a beautiful place to inner tube in shallow water. Along the way, you'll see businesses from an earlier time. And churches that are sinking into the past. At one time, they gave hope to many people that are now no longer with us. When it comes to ruins, Crawford County never disappoints. Each time I go for a drive, I know I'll find something that I've never seen before. Like a limestone building sitting beside the road and long abandoned. As they say, this one has good bones. Roof, not so much. This was once a place where people woke up on a Sunday morning, put on their Sunday best, and assembled for a few words of hope. Just like people, this one is worth saving. One of the most impressive ruins is the old pump house. Long ago, this controlled the depth of the Ohio River for boats. You can still see remnants of the equipment. It's been a local hangout for decades, with last year's graffiti painted over by the next. There are 3 levels to explore. Also another one with good bones. If only someone had money and a plan. Leavenworth was once a thriving town, but was wiped out by an epic flood. There are very few original buildings from the 1800s. This one was vacant for a long time. But someone now has a plan. As we travel further west, more forgotten history unfolds. Along with beautiful places to stop and take a breath. Getting away from everyone and living in seclusion is not a new concept. This place, in relatively good shape, seems frozen in time. It has a driveway that is completely overgrown. No one has been here for ages. The state owns this gracious old property, but it's unclear what they'll do with it. Crawford County has had several courthouses, from wood cabins to brick, places to settle legal disputes and criminal cases. These courthouse ruins date back to the early 1800s. Once a busy place, there are only echoes of the past, and justice long served. Spencer County is the land of Santa Claus, and this used to be the Santa Claus Post Office. It was designed to look like Santa's headquarters. Just down the road are ruins of the Santa Claus toy factory. At Lincoln City are ruins of a cabin. It's thought to be the boyhood home of Abraham Lincoln. Historians have went back and forth on if that's true or not. Nonetheless, the foundation has been encased in bronze. Martin County is a place of great quiet and gigantic old barns. Houses from yesteryear that only hint of stories and people. At Trinity Springs Park was once a large hotel. Guests came to soak in the healing mineral water, much like at West Baden and French Lick. While the hotel is now gone, the spring still flows. If you have an aching ankle, the waters are said to be magical. On the bluff behind the spring are where Civil War recruits carved their names before going off to war. Some never came back, and this is the last record of whom they were. Stories of people from the past fade off into the distance. I've driven past these Orange County buildings over and over, wondering what they were. Well-built limestone buildings with nothing to say what they are. There are no museum pieces inside, only pieces of pipe. Any guesses? Built in 1916, these were pump houses for the Orange County Water Company. Mystery solved. West of downtown Paoli is this old building along the road. The sign above the door offers a clue, but not a great one. Once upon a time, this was a mineral water bottling company. As the water contained natural lithium, which is a modern antidepressant, it was very popular in its time. After all, who doesn't want a bottle of happiness? While Washington County has its share of abandoned barns, this two-story federal has always fascinated me. Some have told me it was a stagecoach stop back in the 1800s, while others say it wasn't. I can envision a time when people sat on this porch and watched the world go by, a day before smartphones and internet, when anyone passing your house could turn into a long conversation and a handshake. The church behind my grandparents' old place was never used in my lifetime. It has sat alone for at least half a century. It's a quiet sentinel next to a cemetery where some of my relatives are buried. Inside are pews from over 100 years ago, and a pulpit where hundreds of sermons were preached. It sits in a clearing, irreverent to time. At the top of the hill is what used to be my relative's diner, Maxine's. I remember a time when old men in overalls, wearing farmer hats, sat on the clean white porch. They would talk about the weather and wave at everyone that passed by. It's hard to see it this way. Time has taken its toll. Just across the road, on my cousin's tombstone, it shows how the diner used to look. I'm glad to say, I remember. At downtown Bedford, there's an old Monon train station that's seen its better days. Once upon a time, trains brought passengers to Lawrence County to stay at the luxurious Greystone Hotel and shop at stores around the courthouse square. Once on a list for renovation, it caught fire in 2023. Its future is uncertain. Hidden along the Monon Trail is a deep hole in the ground with a forgotten past. This is where limestone for the Pentagon was quarried. Now known as Stack Rock, tons of extra stone was cut and stacked around the perimeter, just in case the Pentagon ever needed it. No longer an active quarry, it's been a local hangout for decades. Graffiti covering graffiti year after year. The limestone industry in Lawrence County was once so big that a hydroelectric dam was built along the White River. Dismantled long ago, it serves as a place for people to fish. Another wonder is the Empire Pit, where all the stone for the Empire State Building was quarried. Not far away are ruins of a pyramid and a replica of the Great Wall of China. The project was abandoned when federal funding was cut. I can't help but think this would have been the coolest thing ever. The town of Avoca used to have a fish hatchery that restocked the state's rivers and lakes with fish. Now decommissioned, you can walk the grounds and see the old limestone structures from the past. But a farm on the outskirts of Lawrence County has a special place in my heart. In the 1850s, my great-great-great-great-grandfather built this cabin. It served as both a home and a grocery store. It was later sold to a family that's kept it for generations. For many years, it served as a weekend family retreat. There are books and old chairs from days gone by. There's a kitchen where meals were made, not only for that family, but mine, nearly 180 years ago. the loft are beds where countless nights were spent in the quiet of the countryside. Such a rare and treasured opportunity to have a look inside. It's now being restored and hopefully will be around for many generations to come. Many years ago, I went for a drive on a sunny day and got hopelessly lost. I ended up at these strange brick igloos in Jackson County. This used to be the Medora Brick Factory, and these were kilns where thousands of bricks were made. Inside, every sound you make is amplified. A not-for-profit organization is trying to make this a museum to tell how this humble factory built universities, grand government buildings, and streets across America. A now forgotten history that sits alone in the Indiana countryside. These were only a sample of southern Indiana's ruins and forgotten places. If a person wanted to see them all, it would literally take years. But just maybe that's where the fun begins, knowing that there's many, many miles of adventures ahead. With a full tank of gas and a few snacks for the road, there are many wonderful discoveries to be made in southern Indiana.